we are live. I'm here with Gunnar, and your last name's Lea?
My last name is Lea. Yes.
I always fuck up Norwegian names. I had a friend of mine and a comedian last episode, and his name was Kjetil. And Americans tend to call it Kjetil. So I want to make sure I pronounce everyone's name correct. So Gunnar Lea?
Yeah, in Norwegian it's Gunnar.
Gunnar, okay, yeah, perfect, yeah.
But in the US it would be Gunnar.
Gunnar
Lee.
Yeah, it's kind of a badass name.
Well, thank you. I didn't think about it, but my granddad, they used to call him Gunley. So when he was in the States, so that's where I inherited my name from.
Oh, your grandfather spent time in the States?
Yeah, he was. He immigrated to the U.S. To work, sailing. So he was spending a lot of time there.
Yeah. And did your dad also have any experience in the U.S. or?
Not really. Like he was traveling with my granddad on the ships because he was a captain, and they were traveling the world all over. Yeah. But so he had some periods when he was small, and some periods he took off from school, so he was familiar with the U.S.
Yeah.
South America, and also
I guess if you're
Middle East, they were going everywhere at the time, and it's a long time ago.
Yeah. And they're traveling all around the world, like by boat.
Yeah, by ships. Yeah, they were hauling like metals, and they were also in the end on the last boat. I think was oil tanker. But it's a long time ago.
Because the Norwegians have a long history of like boats and sailing.
Oh yeah, that's deeply rooted in our culture.
Yeah,
and we did actually, I believe in 1938, before the Second World War, we were the fourth biggest shipping nation in the world. So that's quite fascinating.
Yeah. I recently saw a documentary about an English like expeditionist. Yeah, and it was back in like the early 1900s. And his mission was to try to get down to the South Pole with, I think, like 25 men. Yeah. And it was like this crazy story. But I remember the ship that they took was a Norwegian-built ship.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. So obviously, good quality ships that's going to make it in such crazy conditions.
Yeah, that's in Norway, we had a lot of experience with that. And even if you look back in history, the Vikings, they were rowing to Iceland and Greenland.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy.
Even I believe they were rowing to the U.S. before Columbus. But this is history I didn't study in the details, but that's quite... I've heard that they found Native Americans with blue eyes, so maybe that's true.
Oh, yeah. It would make a lot of sense. It's crazy how, like, back in the day, they used to, like, navigate such long distances. And we have technology now, satellites and, stuff like this, radios, satellite phones and stuff like this. The fact that they would be able to navigate, mostly using like stars and
they did. It's very impressive.
Yeah,
very impressive.
Yeah. And a lot of those techniques, still can be used today.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So it's
they could definitely use it, and it would probably be used if the satellites shut down.
Yeah.
You could do that. I actually do, or my dad has at home. An old navigating system they had on ships. Should maybe see it. We call it in Norwegian a natthus, or it's a night house in English. Like, you actually had a light inside, and you had basically a very simple navigating system that was able to move with the waves, so you could constantly keep your angle. So you keep the arrow to the north. So that was also used when they were not using these sextants to navigate the stars.
Was it a type of compass?
Yeah, it's a type of compass, it's a compass, but it's suspended in 3 dimensions. So when you bolt it to a ship, it actually keeps horizontal. So it keeps the horizon. So similar to a horizon that you use on a small plane, where you can actually follow and see where you are if you're going up or down.
So it's like a very simple, like they call it a gimbal. Yeah. Like in planes, they use a gimbal to stabilize cameras and stuff like that. Well, that's pretty cool.
Would be an old version of that. And also, they compass and everything is suspended in oil. It's actually quite nice.
Yeah.
It's a very nice piece.
Wow. And it's still functional, you think?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah.
I have it in the hallway there. Some of the inheritance from my granddad.
Yeah, so you and your family have a long, like, rooted history in around boats and sailing and being on the water in general, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. From myself, from boats, it's kind of funny how it seems history is repeating itself.
Yeah.
Like I said, my granddad, he was a sailor. He was sailing as first officer during the Second World War, and then he was promoted as captain. He was lucky to survive. He was one of the few that survived. And so I got my name from him. And then growing up, my dad had a leisure shop, I would say. We were doing caravans, tents, these camping trailers, motorhomes, and boats. So and also jet skis. We're selling jet skis back in the 90s. So up until they became illegal for a while.
Oh, they were illegal here in Norway?
Yeah, they were illegal.
Jet skis, huh? Were people just getting injured, or?
No, I believe the rule was that as long as you were not able to sit in the boat, you were sitting on the boat, and it was not legal. So at the time, I was not doing too much boats anymore. Then some guys I know, they actually worked on this, and they took it to the European courts, and they got that reversed. So now if it's CE marked, it's illegal in Norway.
Oh.
Yeah.
And when did that change happen? When did they approve?
Oh, it's probably closer to 10 years ago now.
Oh, so not that long ago.
No, it's not that long ago. Maybe not even 10.
Oh.
Didn't follow that so much, but I'm. But it's a strange rule that came, and we were always talking about why that rule came about, and it's we think it was basically the noise that they were making a lot of noise along where probably politicians had their cabins. And then they decided
there's always an incentive or disincentive at a political level.
And let's outlaw it, and then they had to reverse it when they were CE approved, because we have to go by the European rules.
Yeah. So they considered it a boat that you sit on, and that's why.
That's how I understood it. Like as long as you couldn't sit in it and you're on it, then it was illegal. So then we also had these really old jet skis from the 70s, where you actually had sort of a ski, but you put an outboard on the back. I don't know if you've seen those at any time, but those were the first jet skis that we ever saw, and we couldn't figure out if those were in these rules or not as well.
It would have been funny if someone bought a jet ski and like built like a roof or something to be in it.
You could, and also they had these boats you could attach them to and use them as power. So.
Oh yeah. So. I've seen those boats where the motor and everything is the jet ski. Yeah. It basically it's like modular.
Yeah, it is.
Those are pretty cool.
Yeah, they are cool, and they've been around for a while. And we were selling the Sea-Doo brand at the time, and they also had the jet boats, and they were no problem.
Yeah,
they were no problem.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But those jet boats also make a lot of noise, don't they?
Yeah, that's the same.
So
it's the same. And
but
even,
they said, okay,
a 9.9 horsepower outboards would make the same noise as well. It's just
that's not a good argument to make.
No, it's not. But it was enough to make it illegal, I guess, for a while.
Yeah.
But it took a lot of effort for the guys that put it through the.
Good for them, though.
Yeah, I'm really happy that they got that rule reversed.
Yeah.
Because I think, of course, you should always be careful where people are swimming or being in the sea, and using your head.
Yeah.
But then again, I also think the sea is supposed to be open for everyone. And be able to go.
Yeah. But those safety precautions you would have to take on a boat also.
Yeah, but the argument, I guess, was that they were much quicker and much more agile, and maybe if you were not be careful, then it's easier to hit somebody. It's not so easy to break, whatever. But
yeah, I mean, there are plenty of accidents, but there are accidents on boats and jet skis. But
I'm not for restricting people. I would say it's much better to facilitate.
Yeah,
that would make it fun, more fun for everyone.
I'm noticing, however, in Norway, because I'm from the U.S. and depending on what state, a lot of things go. They kind of let people. I was just in Colorado, and we had our AR-15 in the back of the truck. We took it up to the mountains, and we were just shooting in the woods, just like out the car, and it's a lot of I guess freedom. Here in Norway, I feel like things are a little bit more conservative. They're a little bit more restrictive. I was looking into going hunting here, and they said, "Oh, you got to have a certain license," and I mean, there's a lot of restrictions here. So, I mean, you grew up here. I mean, is that comfortable, or are you more like, "Hey, let us do what we want to do," but with obviously rules?
It's quite hard to tell, really, because I didn't live in the U.S. Or I've lived in Prague for 6 years, so. Compared to that, it's a different freedom. But what is good here is it's peaceful. It's quite safe. It's not much really dangerous stuff happening, and you can do most stuff. Yeah. But you have to know where and how. And there are some things that are a bit too strict, and some things that maybe are a bit too slack. But it always depends. I think. As an individual, you are always looking at from your own perspective, because we are all colored by how we are brought up and how, where we lived and what we had available to us at the time, and so everyone is looking at it from their box, and if whatever you are doing and whoever you meet or whatever activity or one is always referring to one's own experiences, and that's also, I think, is creating a lot of conflict and also a lot of friendships, because when people are similar in the way they look at things, they easily find the tone and they easily become friends. And if one is having very different outlooks and very different backgrounds, it may be more difficult to figure out, what is one's box and one's perspective of life and outlooks. So it's a very interesting topic, this, and try to think how other people are actually perceiving a situation. You can see that. Interesting experiment, actually.
Yeah. No, I think I mean it's good that I get to see it firsthand how it is here, because obviously culturally it's a lot different here than in the U.S. But you can see now, especially not to dive into politics in the U.S., but you can see the extreme division. Yeah. Because there's just, like you said, there's so many opinions, there's so many different backgrounds that it's hard to unify that. And you're never gonna find a law or a policy or regulation that makes everyone happy. Never. No. Because like you said, everyone has different backgrounds and they're in their own little box. But I think here in Norway, like you said, there's a lot of benefits to the way they do it here. I'm sure it's not going to make everyone happy. There's going to be a few people, but for the most part, the rules and regulations that they do have here make a majority of the people here happy and safe.
Yeah, I would say so. Like it's a small country, and that is making it both easier and harder in a way. Because getting to know Norwegians as a foreigner, I think, is probably more difficult, to really get to know people. But once you get to know them, you get to be really good friends. We have a little bit different view on that, and that was one of the things I experienced when I went to the U.S. I spent some time in California and also in Florida, and people are very open, they're very inviting, they are very talkative, and very easy to get in contact with. But you also notice that you don't easily make very good friends. So you can make a lot of friends, but here you may have a bit fewer, but the ones that you have, you can really trust.
Yeah.
So there's some sort of a difference.
Yeah.
Norwegians are much more closed off, I would say. But that also comes from a long history of living far apart. It's a small place. It's difficult to travel. It used to be difficult to travel. And the small population also is making it a lot more uniform. But that's all part of history is uniformity. We didn't have a lot of the, let's say, super rich, what we would call adel, like, what do you call that in English? I'm not really sure, but a lot of people had possibility to make it. And since it was smaller communities, they were also better at working together.
Yeah.
So we didn't have these huge companies or very rich people that had a lot of people under them in the same way as many others, you know, and it made way for much more even distribution of wealth.
Yeah.
It's an interesting history, actually, going back a long time, and people that built this country from back in the 18 and 1900s, they were actually quite smart. Not so sure about the people now, but the guys that founded a lot of these institutions that we have, they were very smart and forward thinking.
Yeah, I guess when your population is small and you have, I guess, less resources, you have to be more resourceful, you know, with what you have.
Yeah.
Of course, that was, I did a little bit of research on like Norwegian history, and before the whole oil boom was logging. That's how Norway kind of got on the map, right?
And that's very interesting, actually. It's something I've been slightly aware of, but probably like 4 or 5 months ago, I was also just by accident running over this documentary, and that was you know, the thing is, Norway, to travel before you had any sort of road is almost impossible. So how would you travel? You had to travel by sea. You cannot walk these mountains. You know, walking from here to Bergen is an impossible task. It's like Afghanistan. You know, it's just wilderness. So when you look on the coastlines, we have, I believe it's the second largest coastline of any country in the world. I think we are only beaten by Canada.
Yeah, I think if you calculate the total amount of shoreline, I think Norway has either 1 or 2.
It's very large.
Yeah,
so that's why they quickly, even in the Middle Ages, they traveled by boats, and the Viking also they used boats. And like you said, they started with logging because they could transport easily on the rivers, and that's also where part of the shipping industry started, and this cooperation I talked about between the smaller villages. You know, they would join on bigger projects, and they started exporting. So they started exporting a lot of wood, especially to Britain.
Yeah.
And it made foundation for building ships. And then early 1900s, we started developing hydroelectric power. That also is huge. So, and that's why I said, like, former statesmen, they were forward thinking, because they needed foreign technology to build this hydroelectric power, and it's really a great country to do it because it's raining a lot and we have a lot of mountains. So they gave the companies options to build and to have 8-year contracts, but they put down some rules, and these rules are very smart. They said that you can build this, but one rule is we have to have somebody from our country who will be with you on these projects so we can learn. And second, the resource and the buildings and so on will be returned to us in 80 years. So they basically gave them a lifetime contract, which for any human would be acceptable. And then you would also get the technology to do it. So, and then we had, with the logging was triggering building of ships, and we developed the shipping. So, like I said, by 38, we had a huge industry in marine. So the oil was, or by 1938, I believe I read that we were producing, maybe it was even earlier, but we had the highest energy production per capita in Norway already, I believe, in 1928, like of the world.
Globally, yeah.
Globally. And that has a lot to do with how much, let's say, industry you can fuel, because you need energy to run any factory or any processing process. So it's a good indicator of wealth.
Absolutely, yeah.
In a country. So, and then the oil was, of course, much later.
Yeah.
But, they also did some smart things there, but I think since then they have been pretty lazy. I would say.
Yeah, that 80 years is very strategic, right?
Oh yeah,
because it is usually the lifetime of one
human. So who would plan further than that? Yeah. I thought it was a great idea when I was reading about this. I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah. Again, not to always like compare Norway to the U.S., but I kind of do it instinctually because I'm American. I think, again, this is a vast generalization. If you're listening and you're American, don't take offense.
No,
but I think the Norwegians, from what I've seen so far, they're very obviously resourceful, but they're very forward thinking. So they're not trying to get that next dollar or kroner, but they're thinking long term, and I think that has proven very well. Another good evidence, as you know, it's like the Norwegian government and the people essentially have ownership of what it's like 1 or 2 or 3% of the total stock market value.
Yeah.
Right. They're investing in other companies using the oil money and investing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that's brilliant, because to have that percentage of ownership in the total stock market of the U.S. is significant, for such a small country.
It is. It's huge. And that's also part of that forward thinking that they did back in the 60s when the Americans came and ConocoPhillips were the first to find oil. And the surplus of that money has been going into the fund for a long time. So it's smart. I believe they actually did start something similar with health and the pensions. But that money, I believe, was spent. So that doesn't have a fund. But I believe Switzerland does have this kind of fund, and it's a similar fund that is also actually paying for healthcare in Switzerland. But I'm not completely sure if that's true or how it was, but that's interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, every country has their share of, political corruption. In working for the FBI, I did a little bit of public corruption cases, and obviously I won't get into it, but it's rampant. If you look at a lot of countries in South America and Asia, I mean, it's like so common. But here, I think in Norway, you do hear about some cases of public corruption. Like didn't that one politician like steal sunglasses not too long ago?
Something like that. Yeah.
I mean, it's so petty, but
it's a very, very low level.
Yeah.
Even there were some cases about some politicians that had rented some apartments or something when they were students, and they are actually being fired for these things.
Now they are.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So it's maybe over the top as well.
Yeah.
It depends on your view.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know, nobody is perfect, but I think that maybe a rule for a politician would be that they actually had a real job.
Yeah.
Because it's very different perspective if you've been bred a politician or if you have actually been working.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's different views.
Yeah. But the transparency here is nice because obviously, like everyone's income is public information, especially government officials and politicians. So if they somehow get like under the table money or something like this, it's pretty well known, right?
Oh yeah.
In the U.S., it's so. I mean, like Nancy Pelosi, for example, career politician. I mean, in government, it doesn't matter how high you are. Even the president, it's capped off at like maybe 200, 300, 400,000, 4 million kroners a year. It's just a part of the law. But then they're worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. Like, how can that be? So they're leveraging their power and their position with private companies and maybe bribes or something like this, to make themselves rich, which should be illegal, in my opinion.
It should. There's there's a lot of lobbying in the U.S. compared to here, I would say, when it comes to politics. You can really see it. It's and for me, I was always very interested in the U.S. and the U.S. policies and also U.S. as a country, because it's our biggest friend and ally in the world. On the other hand, it seems a little bit to me like it's gotten somewhat out of hand because one is not staying to topic. It's just mostly talking shit about each other.
It's a big reality show now.
So it's a bit too much. I would appreciate that you would discuss more policy and less crap. Just to put it easy, because that would be actually very interesting. To get to know how would it be? What are we really thinking to do? But it's always a huge bureaucracy. All of the Western democracies have a huge bureaucracy, and it doesn't turn very easily. You can make a little bit moves, but it takes a long time.
I think I don't know if this is the right word, but like the culture and the process of how politics is run, in the U.S. is really making me sad because, when you run for office, especially like a position like the presidency, you want to be like, okay, I'm the best candidate for this job, and here's why. I can do this and this and this. This is what I plan. But I feel like now people are running under this platform like, no, that person should not be president.
Exactly.
So I should be. It's like if you're running and saying all the shit things about the other candidate, and you don't really talk about how you've like earned the position, it's not really a good. I mean, the people lose out at the end of the day.
That's exactly what I think as well. That's the impression I got this time, probably last time, and even the time before. The last 3 elections. I think maybe it was more on topic 10 years, 15 years ago. But like political advertising is not legal here properly either. Like they can do a little bit, but not like in the US. So there are some advantages and disadvantages. It's a very big, very big part.
Because they say in the U.S. that fundraising, whoever raises the most money usually wins the presidency.
Exactly.
So it's, it is based on money. And so if you think about that, it's basically a popularity contest. And how much you can get from a lobbyist. And,
beauty pageant.
But at the end of the day, again, the people kind of suffer because if things are run this way, the politicians aren't looking out in the best interest of the people, and that's a problem. And I feel like that has transpired over the last 10, 20, 30 years.
That's a little bit opposite here. They maybe took it a little bit too far the other way, that it was supposed to be too equally distributed. Because I was thinking about that last night, actually. If you look back on even some simple cartoon like The Simpsons, you could see that Homer, he was on a minimum wage salary, but he still had a home, he still had a car, and he was still able to support his family. And it's not really like that anymore.
Did Marge, that's the wife's name? Did she have a job? Was she a school teacher?
Yeah, she was a teacher.
Oh, a teacher,
I believe, But
he worked at the power plant.
He was.
She's a teacher. They can still afford to have kids.
Still had, decent living, and doesn't necessarily have to be that way anymore.
Yeah, not today.
No. So there's been a change. There's been a change.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You know, we will see how this is solved. We have to solve it somehow.
Yeah. Because it was common, like in my parents' generation, like for the woman to stay home.
Yeah.
And I mean, not to be sexist, but the woman usually stayed home and like was a house taker and took care of the kids and everything like that. And the guy went out and made money, and that's how they provide. They had a decent life. But nowadays, I mean, it's nearly impossible for one person to work and then try to sustain. That's why,
even if you have a pretty high, well-paying job, it's difficult, and it's exactly the same. Like I was thinking about yesterday. You know that when you think about it, you would have a house, and by 40, you would probably have it paid, and you would have a car and maybe even a cabin.
Yeah.
But that's not really true anymore here either. It used to be like it was one of the big ideas that everyone should be able to own their own house. That's one of Norway's goals, and it's getting more and more difficult to achieve that. So.
Do you think that's in the hands of politicians and banks and stuff like that? Or I guess not to like blame anyone, but in your opinion, if you had to like say, okay, this is the reason why home ownership has become not affordable for most Norwegians, like what would you say is the reason?
It's a really good question, So I'm definitely not a politician. But I would say that it has several factors. It seems to me that I was taking a look at inflation rates, and if you look on inflation rate over the last 30 years, I believe the figure I found was that everything had gone up about 3.5-ish%. No, times. 3.5 times more expensive. So what you got for 10 crowns 30 years ago, or maybe it was in the mid 80s, I would say, then that's 40 years ago. But in general, everything had become 3.5 times more expensive, but housing has gone up about 10 times.
Wow.
So that's part of it, definitely there's a huge difference there. And I remember very well my best friend when I was a young boy. They bought their house for 500,000 crowns back in probably 86. And that was a lot of money at the time.
How much?
500,000 Norwegian crowns.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I thought you 5 million back in.
No. It's
yeah, 500,000.
Norwegian crowns, so $50,000.
Back in the 80s.
Yeah, back in the 80s. And that would probably sell for 5 million at least now. Or 500,000. So it's gone up 10 times. So of course, that's a lot. Yeah. So it's interesting.
So nearly, I mean, very general, but nearly doubles every 10 years.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah. That has a huge impact on what people are able to buy.
Yeah. I mean, if you try to think of a house, I mean, the average house here in Stavanger, Sandnes, around 5-6 million you can get a house for. Yeah. If you imagine in 10 years that being over 10 million for a house, for anyone to get a house, I mean, that seems preposterous.
But that's going to be impossible. So there's going to be a stop there.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Because, I mean, just financially and mathematically, unless income also doubles, like
and that's where the math doesn't add up, because when you look at the salaries and the general inflation, it has tripled in the last 30-40 years approximately, and then housing prices have tenfolded. So of course this has to do with market and availability and building cost, and general costs are all going up, but it is disproportional for real estate.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah,
this could probably be adjusted with politics, to some extent, but we'll just have to see. Yeah. But it definitely cannot go as much up as it has done.
Yeah, I agree. agree.
It will have to stop.
Yeah. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. I'm not a genius or anything. But I figured out because I thought about this roughly about 10 years ago, and I said I'm 40 now. I was around 30, and I didn't have anything to my name.
No.
You know, like because I'm fucking like I'm a traveler and I want to work remote and you know how our generation is. But I thought no, that's silly because if you look at the history, like you said. Home prices, inflation, the housing nearly doubles every 10 years.
Yep.
So if you just rent it for the next 10 years, like you wouldn't have invested any of that. So I got pretty heavily into real estate investing because I realized this concept of how like the housing prices it's like a runaway thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they say the best time to invest was yesterday.
Most definitely.
And it's definitely the case for real estate.
Yeah.
That's
probably
very
with many things. The same. You could say the same.
Yeah, even with stocks.
I missed out on so many opportunities there because I didn't want to add, mortgage. 15, 20, even 30 years ago. So it would have, if one would make different choices, that would definitely affect the future. But we made the choices we made. So.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That's how
and it's hard to believe because you think about that now, and a lot of people are in that position, but it's expensive now, but it'll be even more expensive in the future,
exactly,
right? So,
yeah,
so people will be saying the same thing now, like they are 10 years ago, 10 years from now.
Exactly. So that's why maybe it's not smart to wait. Not wait any longer.
Yeah.
And just do it.
Yeah.
It's probably be a good idea.
Yeah. But if you don't mind, I'd like to go back. So your dad, he started the business, the leisure kind of like.
Yeah. Well, how to put that? My dad, he started just up the street here from where we have the studio, and he didn't really know what to do after high school, so he went to the university in Oslo and he studied psychology for 1 year, but he figured out this was not for him.
Yeah.
So he started importing these scooters like sparkesykkel back in the 70s. And he was selling those, and also he found in Denmark, I believe, trailers for hauling goods, So he started selling those out of my grandparents' garden. And then just up the road here in Järveien 9, he bought a small house and he converted that into a small shop. And then he started selling basically trailers, grill equipment, nuts and bolts, some tools, also hitches for cars, and he was working a lot, day and night. And my granddad, he retired when he was from being a captain, so he was helping him with that.
Okay, so your grandfather was involved in the business.
He was involved. Yeah. My dad started it and owned it, but my granddad, he was, I would say, catching up on time he missed because he was so much away. So they were doing it partly together.
Yeah.
It was family business, and he did it really well there, and had a lot to do. So I was born in 79, and he started it in 71. He started the business in 71. And before that, he was also he was saving money, he was playing in a band. So every Saturday and Sunday, he would be playing music at the dances around, and he was earning some money from that. And also he invested from this and started the business. So from there, so when I was a kid, I was going with him a lot to the shop. So I was basically growing up with tools and drills, nuts and bolts and whatever. And
so he taught you to be handy, working
yeah,
on tools.
yeah. And also by myself, because I was allowed to play with a lot of stuff in the workshop. So I remember even using the stuff that he said I shouldn't use. So I got a lot of practice.
Yeah, that must be super fun for a young kid.
Yeah, it was. It was. I also broke a lot of stuff, but it was nice.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot from that. So I was born in '79, and I lived here in this city from '79 to '82-ish. We were about a couple of kilometers further down the road here in Stavanger. I was living there, and I was really small. And then we moved to Figgjo when I was about 4.
Is that an island?
No, Figgjo is close to Ålgård.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
on E39, so it's 10 kilometers out of the city. Yeah. So that's where I grew up most of my life, in Figgjo. And then I did go to, I had a kindergarten here in Trondheim, and then I moved to a 3-day kindergarten in Figgjo. And also I got to spend a lot of time with my dad in the shop. So almost every day after when my kindergarten was over, and when I was really small, he would pick me up in the truck, and we would go down here, go to the shop and play around there until we went home. Yeah. So it was fun.
Did you have aspirations of, wow, this is so cool, my dad has his business, he has all these cool tools? Did you have aspirations when you were younger of like maybe getting involved or taking over the business?
Yes, both yes and no. As you know, maybe we didn't say yet, but right now I'm a medical doctor. So it's a completely different path. Yeah. And this is sort of quite interesting, from like school for me was not very hard. I never really had a problem with the school. I wasn't the most fun, but wasn't difficult. So I didn't put much effort into it really. And I started working, in my dad's shop at about 13. I would work Fridays and Saturdays. So I was always going with him there, and I was used to working. Yeah. So that was going on, and my main interest basically through my whole life was, or at least up to, it still is a big interest, but I was really into dirt bikes. That was my big thing, and I got my first dirt bike at the age of 4. So I bought it in Italy, because that wasn't legal either in Norway. You couldn't. You had to be 16 to have any motorized vehicle.
But you got one at 4 years old.
Yeah, I got one.
Are there ones that small that you could? That's motorized?
Not in this country, but we found in Italy.
Okay.
So I do have some old pictures of that. It's bought it at this place called Technosport in Morini, Italy. So it's an LEM. I still have it.
You still have the motorcycle from when you were 4 years old?
I still have it, yeah.
Does it run?
Not right now, but I have rebuilt the engine, so it will run.
Oh, wow.
It will run. So we were actually going to, I'm not completely sure if it was planned to buy this or not. I really don't think it was planned. But we were going for holiday in Croatia. And since we had leisure home or leisure business or camping, so camping was a big part of always summer holidays. So we would drive from Norway, and we went to Croatia, and that is through Italy. Wow. And we stopped in this little town, and we saw these tiny dirt bikes and also tiny road racing bikes. And we went there, and my dad, he was into speedway racing. So we went into the shop, and I remember they started up, and I ran off and hit, because I didn't like sound. I was afraid of sounds. I was so young.
Yeah.
But they convinced me, to try and sit on it and all that. And they picked it up. We brought it. And that summer, I learned how to ride that at the campsite. And since then, I was hooked on riding dirt bikes.
Yeah.
So I was doing that as much as I could, mostly at home in the garden. Since this was basically illegal, so we had to be a little bit careful. But we went to the tracks. There were some smaller tracks. These are closed off a long time ago, but we had some really nice ones up in Vatne. It's a sand pit. So I got to ride there a little bit, and by the age of 6, I grew out of these LEM bikes. So my dad, he managed to get me a Yamaha YC50, and that was fast one.
50cc.
Yeah, 50cc YC.
At 6 years old.
Yeah, and the others were 50 as well, but they were like 2.5 horsepower. This YC50 was 9.9 horsepower.
Wow.
So that was pretty quick. So that was a real dirt bike. Then then suddenly there were no hills that were too hard, or no dirt that was too soft. So that's when I rode that a lot, and I made jumps back home in the garden, and I would roost my parents' lawn, would go around everywhere with this one. And so that's, I really started riding a lot, and that was fun, So we did have a little bit issues because of that age thing and the tracks, but usually we would just go, and in the end I would be let, onto the track and ride. And by the age of 8, I got an 80cc machine. It was way too big for me, but I started riding, more. And so we took it from there. We went from 80s. I actually competed in. Since it was a bit difficult with the age and the racing part here in Norway, so I was a member of club in Denmark, Gjøring Motor Club. So we got to do racing season there. So from the age of 12, I was competing in Denmark in the Danish championships.
Because in Norway, you had to be 18 to compete.
Yeah, they were making the rules a little bit softer. And actually, we did some tricks there as well, You had to be 16, and the smallest class was 125. And then they changed the rules, so you could start riding the 80cc when you were 14 in competition. So this was probably back in 91. And what we basically did was you had to get a license to race, and there was no digital system. So we cheated a little bit. So when we signed up to race, so I just changed my date of birth. So I was racing from 12 in Denmark, but I started racing also from 12 in Norway.
So then you were racing 16-year-olds,
right? 14, 15-year-olds.
At 12 years old.
Yeah. So.
And no one really winked an eye, like, that kid looks a little young.
Yeah, but in that age, between 12 and 14, you can really not. It could be difficult to tell, And
but was it intimidating at all, or were you just so into it that this was fun for you?
It was a little bit scary, maybe, but I was pretty fast, so I would usually be the win if I was on the start.
Wow.
So because I had been riding for so long, I didn't have a trainer or anything like that. I was just riding by myself, But we spent so many hours on the bikes that once we got going, we're doing the races here that were locally. I quite easily beat the other kids or the older ones. And in Denmark was a lot more competition. It was much tougher, but I did win quite a few races there as well. And so we, at the age of 14, we started, at 13 probably, I was a year young. We took it up a notch. So we actually got really lucky because we were able to rent some land up in Sviland. So we actually got to get a private track there.
You guys made your own?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So we rented a quite large area from a very nice farmer up there. Yeah. And we built a hybrid motocross/supercross track. So that we actually had training possibilities. So from that day on, I was up there as much as I could.
So you had your own private track?
Yeah, I did.
That's
was really lucky.
That's awesome.
And I also we had a lot of friends because of my dad's shop. You meet everyone, So we knew people who had backhoes or diggers and could help us build a track. Yeah. So we had help, and they would. So if I was not riding, I was working on the bike, and if I wasn't working on the bike or riding, I was prepping the track. So I spent a lot of time on the track, really, and having a fun.
And then when you were sleeping, you were probably dreaming about...
Going back to that, when I was in 7th grade, which would now, by the school system, now be 8th grade, I remember my teacher sent a complaint to my parents that, it would be nice if Gunnar would write some stories about something else than dirt bikes, So that's also part of my connection to the U.S. because the U.S. has a very, very strong series. They have the U.S. Supercross, and they also have the Outdoor Nationals. It's the biggest market in the world, so a lot of great racers are from the U.S. So from quite an early age, I remember actually an episode in, I was still in grade school, but we had a satellite dish in those days, and you could see European sports channels. And I had found in the newspaper that, I believe it was a channel called Screen Sport. They were showing American Supercross on TV at, let's say, I think it would be at 12 o'clock, and I would be in school, So I knew we had gymnastics there. So actually, that's the only time I actually really skipped school.
To go watch it?
I went home, and I rode my bike home, and I watched that race, on Screen Sport. And I got back to school, and they didn't quite catch me, It was an awesome race.
Yeah. So you were obsessed.
Yeah, with dirt bikes, I was completely obsessed, and I raced in Denmark, and I raced in Norway, and since we had that private track, we did get to have a lot of fun, and I was when I was going into gymnasium, which would be high school in the US, I guess. You could apply to NTG. It was called Norwegian Toppidrettsgymnaset, which is a gymnasium that they really had a dirt bike, like a facilitated high school that was in sports for dirt bike racing.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah.
And they actually
that must have been a no-brainer for you. It's like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, I really, when I think about it, I should have done that, but I didn't. So when I was 16 and 17, I was on that junior national team. And we were 8 guys, and I was the only one that was not from that school. So, but I had to move to Oslo, and at the time, in my head, I wasn't ready for that, to live that far away from my home and family. But in retrospective, it would have been probably a great dirt bike career move. But on the other hand, to make a living from racing dirt bikes, you have to be really good. So that's on a different level, and I think would have been achievable. Even though we got to race a lot.
So if you got into the program, you would have had to move to Oslo.
Yep.
In order to you didn't want to be that far from your family.
No, it was. I couldn't see myself doing that. So,
did your parents or your dad more specifically support you in doing that? He said, if you want to go to Oslo, you can go. Or was he like?
They would definitely have. If I would have wanted to, I would say they would have done that.
Yeah.
They always supported me with whatever crazy thing I wanted to do.
That's fantastic. Because oftentimes when you're so young, you can voice what you want to do, but if you don't have supportive parents, it's very difficult to pursue
that's
it.
really hard.
It's great to hear that your parents and your dad was so supportive of you, focusing on this.
Yeah, it was actually incredible. I was really lucky about that. But his interest was also with motorbikes, and he always rode a motorbike, and he was doing speedway when he was young. So for him, he also started riding because he wanted to ride with me.
Yeah.
So it was, and we traveled. My brother and my mom were with us sometimes, but it was mostly me and him. So we were doing, from the age of 12, I believe, we did 17 races at least a year.
Wow. A year?
A year. Yeah.
Holy shit.
So
this was a full-time thing for you then?
Yeah. So we did, our racing season started in February and we were finishing in September. So we were doing 16, 17 weekends at least. Even going to Denmark or going to different parts of Norway. Most of the racing are east, so he was the one who was driving, and even going to Sweden, we were driving for 24 hours,
just for you to race,
to do the race, on a race weekend. So
these must have been some. I mean, even now as an adult, I mean, these must be some really fond memories.
Oh yeah.
Being on the road with your dad and working on and racing together. So he essentially became like your organic coach.
Yeah, you could really say that. Like he was of course incredibly busy with running the business and doing that. So part of my job, was to get the bikes ready. So I had to early age know how to service it and how to clean the air filter and tension the chain and check the spokes and do the top end when they were worn out and all of that stuff. And so I was servicing my bike and I was also doing his. So I was responsible for getting the equipment ready, but he would always take me to ride. Take me there, and also brought a lot of friends with me, and a few of them also rode a little bit. So he was very supportive of this.
Wow.
So we had a lot of fun with it. But dirt bikes, they're fast and it's a rough sport, so it brings a lot of injuries with it. So that's why I stopped at the age of 17. Like I decided that I would not compete on a national level. Actually, because I have encountered a few injuries, which were quite big. So
that you would classify it as like a career-ending injury, or
that came a little bit later. Let's put it that way. But if you look at it, so injury-wise, dirt bikes I think must be on the top of the list. I think so. It was funny, in the pits and with my teammates and also with the other riders, we would just for fun in the evenings, talk about how many bolts and screws we had in our bodies and look on X-rays, this one was crushed and this one was cracked. So I first time I actually had a really big injury. I was 9. We were riding at the sand pit in Mosaic. I'm not really sure what happened, but I broke my shin completely off, so my leg was in the opposite direction. And that was extremely painful. That was my first really big big accident. That took me a while to get over it because I was a bit uncertain of. It was mostly psychological, I think, because I was so young, and I wasn't afraid of riding again. Like that didn't bother me, but I was a little bit. Is this leg stable enough? Is it strong enough? Because
that little bit of doubt. Even though you've
Because I remember when I broke it, I was looking at it and it was like lying in the opposite direction. It felt very, very strange. So it took me. Usually that wouldn't be very long. It would be a 3-month thing. But I remember I wasn't back on the bike. I think it took me 5 months maybe until I was back on the bike, which is quite long. But that was mostly because I was a little bit afraid of that leg, that just would support me and that I would have the strength.
Yeah, if you came back too early and then you re-injured it or something.
I didn't think that far. It was just that funny feeling because at the time, I had these huge casts on and it was immobilized and it got weak. And
you lose the muscle.
You didn't. We were not taught how to do any rehab on that, because I was just 9, so they expect you, to go out and just start using it again. So that took me some time, but I never got afraid of riding again. So I broke that, and then I was always, into going fast no matter what, the next thing I broke was my collarbone. That was probably at the age of 13. And I also broke my right foot, and maybe at the age of 12. I didn't realize it was broken until many, many years later. We saw it on an accidental X-ray.
Oh, so you had broken it but not realized. You were still riding on it? Was it painful?
Yeah, it was painful for years. Still is. I have a bone there that's split in two. And I had the collarbone there. And then I had a stupid accident while on a sled. So I just ran really hard into a tree. It was so I broke my arm, my right arm, at 14. So I had these things that were setting me back a little bit. And then in the second season on the national team, the whole NTG crew, they went to Spain for winter training. So I wasn't part of that, so we went to Florida. I wanted to ride in Florida because they have a great climate, and we bought new bikes, and everything was set up there, and they even had organized for me to try and be part of the Tampa Supercross that year. That was in 1995. No, 96 it was. And there was a huge riding area in Florida. It was called Crooms. So I was there, and several of the American pros were there and riding, and I crashed there. So then I tore my ACL and meniscus, and also the ligament, the collarbone, for the second time on the left side.
Was this your first time riding with pros in the U.S.?
Yeah, that was my first time.
So that must have been like a really big next step for you.
Yeah, it was, and the Supercross is really, really exciting to me. And
I'm sorry, I don't know anything about motocross. What's the difference between Supercross and motocross?
Yeah, Supercross is basically in a stadium. So they have a football stadium or...
where they do those big jumps.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. So that's... so they had... The guys in Florida that I know, they had organized for me to try and qualify for the Tampa Supercross there. Yeah, huge
that was a qualifying run.
I was going to try and qualify for the mains, so that was my goal, to be there and to attend and try to race that race. Maybe I was lucky that I crashed up front because that's a very high level, very high level.
Yeah.
So then I was watching everything from a wheelchair, the whole race from the wheelchair. But that injury so the rest of that season, the collarbone is quick to heal up. That's not a problem, and you get strength back. But that torn ACL and the meniscus was causing a lot of problems.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what was wrong with the knee. It took a lot of time to figure that out, and I lost out on so much training, so much preparation for the next season, and I needed to have that fixed because it was so unstable. I couldn't run and ride with it. So then that's when I decided that I asked my dad, like, probably we will not race the nationals next year, and he was okay with that. So from that point on, I took a break. I had a whole year off riding dirt bikes, and I got the knee taken care of. I got the rehab done, and then from that point on, I was just racing as a hobby, and doing the local stuff again.
Yeah. Was that 1 year that you took off? Was that hard mentally to not be riding?
Not really, because I had been doing it for so long. I was training so much for so long that it was quite nice, to not have that pressure.
A little bit of relief.
Yeah. Because I always felt some pressure, not to necessarily win, but the whole setting. You put a lot of effort into it, and you would like, of course, to win.
Course, yeah.
That's why you're there.
It's a competition,
But I didn't have a huge pressure from my parents to win. I didn't. But I also felt that if I wasn't able to ride the top 5 level, then I didn't need to be there.
Yeah.
So, but once the knee healed up and I got my strength back and all of that, so I got myself a bike again and I started riding, and I was still riding a lot, and I still had that property, the private track. Then we also bought our own machines to work on the track. So I was still doing it, a lot, but I just wasn't racing it.
And your dad's business was doing well at this point? It was growing and...
Yeah. His business was going really, really good.
Yeah.
We started in the small place just up the street here, and then he bought some land a little bit further up in Holbein, and so we had a quite good thing, a very good thing going. It was growing, and so in reality, it felt to me that I was expected to take over that business. That was part of how it felt. It was never said to me directly, but
kind of implied.
It felt to me like it was part of what was supposed to be. So I actually made the choice then when I went to high school that I would go for studying marketing and economics as part of general academic. So I was doing language and mathematics. I did have mathematics. I did have bedriftsøkonomi, which would be company economics and marketing. But to be quite honest, these subjects were not for me. Marketing was quite fun, but at the time in the mid-90s, computers and all of this didn't interest me. So for me, it was I did lose a little bit interest in school at that time. Languages, they went well, but I was a bit school tired. And so when I finished third year, so the possibility to work in the shop came up, to get a full-time job. So I ended up with being there, and I took over the boat department. So that's why I got really involved with boats, and that was around the age of 19. So I quite quickly I did know how to turn the wrenches and work on the engines and all of that. So I was able to do all of that mechanical and the technical stuff. And also, I was a lot involved in the sales side and the service. So I was basically doing everything.
Yeah, you were sounds like you were like a general manager.
Yeah, almost like I was supposed to take care of the boat, and I was 19 at the time. So it was fun, So I took on that challenge, and we grew that part very nicely. So by 2003, then I'm 24. At the age of 24, we were doing good in the boat department. I did have maybe you know this brand, but it's not a US brand. It's a Norwegian. No, it's a Finnish brand, but it's huge, big here, Finnmaster. We were dealing with boats that could fit on a trailer, not much more. So it's about up to 22 feet, approximately, mostly.
So you can travel with you.
Bring it to the sea, So this Finnmaster brand we picked up in '96, and we worked it into the market. And we, as a dealership, we actually had five brands, which is quite a lot. So we started out with Johnson and Evinrude, which are US-made engines, and then we had we got the Suzuki. The Suzukis we got in around '99, I believe. So we felt like it was good to have a Japanese brand in there as well, because
they're known for their reliability.
Exactly. They were somewhat easier to sell. And Yamaha was already taken here in this city, so but we managed to get that Suzuki. They made great engines, so that was a good supplement for us. And then one of the importer of Tohatsu and Honda engines, they also took over a smaller boat brand, because in Norway, the engines are often linked to a brand of boats because they like to sell the engines as a package. So we also ended up with Honda and Tohatsu. So we basically were serving 5 brands at the same time.
Wow.
So we had a lot to choose from. And on the jet ski side, we did have the Sea-Doo, which is also big, the Rotax engines. And so we were just going at it, and I got to play a lot with these things. I was on the sea almost every day with some sort of boat, and for me it was if it would be bigger and faster, and
So you had this you had this insatiable need for speed, and now you're working around boats and jet skis. I mean, in your 20s, I mean, that seems like a dream job.
Yeah, it was. And my dad, he was so he was also into this. He was so supportive. So I got to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that sounds like so much fun. He's like, you don't want to go to school? Then just go mess around with the boats and jet skis.
Yeah, that's what we did. So, but we put in the work as well. So I guess it's easier to say yes when you are actually putting in the work. And we used a lot of the boats, that I got to use as a personal boat. It was also a promotion for the company. So we would be putting together some fun things and have a lot of going in the waves. It was fun.
Yeah. Well, they say when you're having fun, you don't work a day in your life. So.
No, that's true. And that's kind of what changed for me, because in 2003, I had worked 5 years in the shop, and I had put in a lot of effort, and everybody else that was with us, they put in a lot of effort. And in 2003, there was a big change in the boat industry in Norway or Scandinavia. And that was Yamaha were producing they were owning a brand called Yamarin, which was produced in Finland by a company called AMT. And AMT is Advanced Marine Technology. And what happened was that Yamaha as a company, they went in and they bought Finmaster, which was my main...
The bestseller.
Yeah, my best-selling product.
And someone else had Yamaha rights here?
Yeah.
So now that Yamaha purchased them, you could no longer...
That was the thing. That's why we ended up with issues there in 2003 at the end of the season. Because at that year in NOx, I was the Norway's largest customer. So I was selling, well, I didn't sell the biggest number of boats, but in crowns, I was the biggest dealer or purchaser of boats from Finmaster as a factory. Yeah. So Yamaha went in and they bought everything, and they really wanted to continue work with us. But the condition was, if you want to keep Finmaster, you have to quit everything else. You have to throw out Johnson, Evinrude, Suzuki, Honda, and Tohatsu, and all of the other brands, and you can be an exclusive Yamaha and Finmaster dealer. And that was a very difficult choice because a lot of the other stuff was bread and butter things. You know, you would sell in hundreds a year. So this became sort of a turning point for me because I put so much effort into building that and also working late hours, and we just kind of killed my motivation. So I was trying in 2004 to replace the brand. You know, we were looking into different options. We had some other brands, but they didn't. You know, if you want to be a successful boat shop, you need to have a brand that, in a way, sells itself a little bit. So, and then you can support that infrastructure around. So, I was looking into, so the big brands in Norway at the time were Askeladden, you know, Yamarin, we had the Finmaster. We did have access to a brand called Skipsblast and Bevar Morgan, but they were not big sellers. And then Ibiza boats, they were huge. So, but due to the fact that this city is so close to Stavanger, it was really difficult to manage to replace this Finmaster in our shop. So we tried with some Polish brands, had a lot of trouble with them.
So when they made that, not offer, but basically said, you either sell ours exclusively or there's no deal, you said no.
Yeah, we said no. Okay. We figured we would find something else to replace it. And let's see, looking back at it, you know, I'm not sure what was the right choice because either or, it would have been difficult. So we ended up saying no because we figured we would come up with something. And we did, in a way, get access to AMT, which was the former Yamarin, but they were not competitively priced. They were a bit too expensive. So it was difficult to sell them because people won't pay you 10% more for that brand. Then we got some Polish-built boat. They were cheap, but they were problematic. Always something going wrong with them. So I did try with some US boats, Larson, which is, used to be a quite big brand in the US, Larson and Glastron. Excellent hulls, but they're designed for Florida weather conditions.
Not here.
California, no. So for the weather conditions here, they are, you know, you cannot sell that. Yeah. We did have a quite nice French brand called Beneteau. They had some nice cabin boats and more fishing boats. So that was a nice one, but we were not able to fill that gap. So from that point on, you know, I kind of lost interest, I must say, in the market.
Sure.
Because I felt backstabbed, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it was someone else telling you how to run your business.
Yeah, and also the fact that the effort that I put in put also Finnmaster on the map for Norway. Yeah. Since both here and Haugesund, we were the two absolutely largest dealers. It's not large by US standard, but still it was a significant amount of boats we were putting out and making them known. So the moment they managed to get the quality up and running, they are kind of stolen. So
I guess they had. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all a business.
Yeah, it is.
And if a big company like Yamaha is coming in and making this offer,
of course,
maybe it was an offer they couldn't refuse. And
so that's definitely what happened. And I know that they were doing it to grow. They moved the Yamaha in production to Finnmaster's locations, so they owned the drawings and the patents for those boats. Yeah. So they were doing it to make better efficiency and of course sell more boats, and they made it great from that. And in a way, when I look back at it now, it's like I'm very happy that it happened, because
everything happens for a reason.
It triggered what happened.
Yeah. Very strategic for Yamaha, though.
Yeah. But that's how all the outboard manufacturers do it, because there is, of course, a replacement market where you sell replacement boat engines for old outboards, but then selling new boats pre-rigged is a big business. And of course, Yamaha is probably the number one seller. Right. They have great name, they have great products. So with jet skis as well, they are who everyone else is trying to beat. So I understand why they would go that way.
Right. So what led? So this whole thing happened. You deny the offer. You were looking for replacement boats to kind of like offset what had happened, and then you kind of lost interest, I guess, in general over boats. Or
no, not on the boating side, but from my point of view, I always was around engines, and I always loved cars, and I loved motorbikes and everything that was going fast. So, but from that work point of view, I put so much into building that brand and having a success with that once it kind of disappeared and I wasn't able to make something new, my focus changed a little bit. So I went from being super interested and doing everything I could to drifting off a little bit, because it was, like I said, it was kind of expected that I was supposed to take over the business and run it. It's like my parents never really said it, but I always had that feeling that was my It
was kind of
duty.
Like an unspoken.
Yeah, it was sort of my duty in a way, since I was working there.
Right.
So the next few years we were plugging along and we were making it. We were still selling a good number of boats and still doing the things, but I didn't have the same drive because it was a lot of work to build up a new brand.
Yeah. All right, we just went to the bathroom. We're back, and so we were talking about how you were losing a little bit of motivation, because of what had happened in your business and stuff like that, and your parents were making kind of the unspoken assumption that you were going to take over the business.
Yeah, that's true. And at the time, I didn't really have a formal education at all. I only had high school. Yeah. So I was contemplating, what to do. I did have some other projects going on all the time because I was always into from when you ride dirt bikes, you become a different person. I cannot explain it because you always view risk somewhat differently.
Yeah.
So to me, everything had to be fast. You know, it wasn't enough for me to run on my feet or even almost ride a bicycle. I rode a lot of bicycles growing up, but I wanted more thrill. So I loved the jet skis, you know, because that was similar to riding dirt bikes. And
just on the water.
and also with the boats, I would, when the fishing boats went ashore, you know, and the weather was too bad, then we would go out and jump the waves on the boats. And with the jet skis, if the waves were 3 meters, we didn't care, you know, we were just flying those things. And you get a completely different perspective, you know. People thought we were maybe insane. I broke 2 of our showroom boats. I smashed them completely from the waves. But my dad he didn't beat me up over that.
That's
you know?
awesome.
It's like we returned them to factory because they were bad quality. They had been tested.
Yeah. You were kind of like the quality test person. Yeah.
But you know, when I was even younger, in 7th, 8th grade, I was thinking about being a doctor. You know, I had that idea in my head.
While you were into motocross?
Yeah, when I was riding dirt bikes. And it didn't have anything to do with the injuries or being in the hospital or anything like that. But it was interesting. And we had a doctor in our family, which pretty, not very close, but he was head of the orthopedic department in the hospital here, and everybody was talking about him like he was sort of a family hero in a way. He was very good mechanic. He was very smart. And so, you know, this was fascinating me as well. I'm always interested in how things work and how a body works and the engines, and didn't matter. So actually around that time when we lost this Finn Master, I was already running a side business with car tuning.
Cartooning?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were doing, or I was, and it was just out of interest. And I have to give credit to my family and my dad there as well for supporting me there, because I always had this interest in cars, fast cars, bikes, jet skis, whatever I could.
Anything that goes fast on wheels.
Yeah, it would be great. It was great. So, so back in '97, he agreed to buying a brand new Corvette. It was the 5th generation Corvette, and me and my girlfriend at the time, we were allowed to go to the US, and we stayed 5 weeks in Florida, and we got to buy the car.
Wow.
And picked it up at the dealership, and we got dealer tags, and we drove around, you know, in this.
So you and your girlfriend were driving around Florida in a Corvette.
Yeah,
wow.
At the age of 18, 19, you know, I was due to him, you know, or my family that allowed them.
I want to meet your dad.
He
sounds like
do an interview with him as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I always had this huge interest for cars, and that was also part of why I taught had German in school, because I was into BMW.
Yeah.
So from that point on, or much younger, I was really excited about fast cars, sports cars, you know, trucks, and when I look, even I was very, very young. Our company car was, we first had a Toyota pickup truck. That was very slow, so we ended up getting that was back in '94. We got a Chevy, a Silverado, with a 6.2 diesel.
That's a big engine, yeah.
Yeah, and at the time, you know, how old was I? 90, that was a 93 model. And so I was 14. And at the time, I decided that this one is too slow. It's too slow. So
You're driving the Silverado at 14? Off record.
Off record.
Yeah.
I was,
Wow. I mean, but at that time, you probably had more experience with engines and motors than most adults.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
a lot more.
Yeah.
I've been into almost anything. So by myself, I figured out. We didn't have internet at the time, so I was researching, calling around, to people, and I managed to get a hold of all the instructions that. There's a huge U.S. company in California called Gale Banks Engineering. They are currently supplying the U.S. Army with engines for the new vehicles. They are new combat vehicles, new Humvees. And they were making turbo systems for these engines at the time, and that was quite expensive. So my dad didn't want to buy the turbo system, but I got a hold of all the instructions. And I, even at that age, knew that if you add some fuel to a diesel, it will usually go faster. You can get some more power from it. So at 14, I don't know how he allowed me to do that, but I disassembled the V8 and I found the fuel screw somewhere deep down there, and I turned it as instructed by the engineering papers from Gale Banks. And it did improve the power. So
to introduce more fuel into the system.
Yeah, into more fuel. So I managed to do that. Maybe I didn't gain so much. It would have been much more with the turbo, but even at that time, I was into this stuff. So that interest kept on, and when I got my driver's license, my dad, he was also supportive of that, so I wanted to buy a cool car. So I asked him, I had saved about 70,000 crowns myself, and so I said, I would really like to buy this 200 SX, these old Nissans.
Nissans, yeah.
200 SX.
Yeah, now they're real popular in the drift culture.
Yeah.
Really popular. Yeah.
Still today, I think they're using some of these at least 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, that platform is ideal for,
So that was back in 97. So I got a hold of a 91 model with only 70,000 kilometers on it. So I had saved 70,000, but I lacked 100. So he said, okay, I'll go to the bank. And at the time, I didn't have a proper job. I only had a part-time job, but he signed the loan papers with me. So I was responsible for paying this.
It was 170,000 kroner?
Yes.
Back in
97.
That's quite expensive for 97.
Yeah, it was.
That's not a cheap car.
No, it wasn't. It was quite fast. It was a 1.8 turbo.
That'd probably be like the equivalent of like a 500,000 kroner car now.
Something like that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So, but he was always supporting me. So, but in a way that I believe taught me that I had to work for it. It wasn't handed to me. But I was given the opportunity. So I was already having that loan at the age of 18, that car loan, and I was still in school, so I could drive to school myself. And the 200 SX, it was fun. I got it. Some rims for it. I got some tuning. It was nice. And so then just about maybe a year later, I was ready. I would like something a little bit faster, something more fun, something more cool.
That's one of those things you can't go back.
No.
Like when you have a fast car, you cannot.
Really hard, it's really hard. And so then I got the opportunity for my cousin was running a car shop here in the town, and he managed to find me a Mazda RX-7. These rotaries.
The rotary engines.
The rotary.
Wow. What year?
A 93. So the latest generation, the one that's still popular.
Yeah, those look nice, and they
were fast at the time.
The guys who tune those can get those over 1,000 horsepower.
Oh yeah. You can. You can still find guys who do. That was a 2-rotor engine, but they have 3 and 4. And even now, if you look online, Rob Dahm, he's got a huge 12-rotor. That's the only one in the world. But so again, you know, I sold that one, and my dad, he supported me again on getting the RX-7, and I got that one. And
wow.
it was really a nice car. Really a nice car. It was agile. It was quick.
How much horsepower was it? Was it stock RX-7?
Stock at the time, it was 255.
Okay. But real light car also?
Yeah, it was 1,300 kilos. So at the time, it was fast.
Was it a front engine, front wheel drive, or a rear?
That was a rear wheel drive with front engine, 2-stage turbo system on it.
Pretty even distribution, right? Like the weight?
And that was exactly the thing, you know, because I went on the scales with it. And at the traffic station out here, they had the weight, so you could go. And it was with the driver in, it was 695 kilos front and 695 on the rear when you were sitting in the seat. So it had a perfect distribution.
Yeah.
So that was an amazing car. Then in 2001, I was going to Oslo in a meeting with the Suzuki, and we were going over the mountains in the summer, and it was me and my girlfriend, and we had a head-on collision there in the mountains with Volkswagen Transporter.
Shit.
So he was. The road is very narrow, so you have to move to the sides, and he didn't move, so he moved to our side. So he went head-on into him. So
and it was you and your girlfriend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She took really, really a hard hit there. Still suffering from that. I was really lucky. I escaped it without any big injuries, but the car was totaled.
Yeah.
So that was an experience, to say the least. So at that point, I think that's the only time I really, from any accident or any crash or whatever I did, you know, I actually got scared after.
Yeah.
Because it kind of showed that I was always used to riding on a track, and all the idiots are going the same way. You know, so from that point of view, you know, you are only responsible for yourself.
Yeah.
But when you're in traffic, there's a lot of people you have to take into account.
Yeah.
And of course, if I had been more careful at the time, I would probably have walked away better. But also, the guy we crashed with, he actually crossed the road and hit us straight on. So from that point of view, it's almost was a completely unavoidable accident. So, but anyway, after that, when I came to the cars, I skipped on the sports car part, and I bought a Ford F-250. That was in 2000. So next time I hit somebody,
it won't be you that's suffering.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And from that point on, you know, I was taking a lot of interest in the cars and building and doing turbos, and so I basically started a small company on the side, which was doing tuning, and we were mostly doing diesels.
Is that a big market here? Like, do people like or want their cars?
It used to be a huge market back in those days. And that was because of taxing, because we had a disproportional high amount of F-250s with the big trucks, Chevys, Fords, the Excursion, you know, if you know
the Ford
the
Excursion,
huge, SUVs. And that's because they were registered as trucks over 3.5 tons, so they were tax-free. Because in Norway we have I don't know if you noticed, but there's like a personal car is very expensive if you're not going electric. But if it had a petrol engine, it was twice the price or 3 times the price as in the US.
Wow.
Because of taxes. But these cars, the trucks, they were registered as a lorry or a hauling vehicle.
Because of how the weight.
Yeah. So they were tax-free. So you only paid the regular MVA. So that meant that I could get a brand new F250 for 270,000 plus MVA. And if you were buying something similar, it was 600,000-700,000 even at the time. So and it was perfect because I could tow the boats and use it as a work truck as well.
Yeah.
I put a lot of effort into that. And so we were doing cars, and that was also a very, very fun part of my life with working with the vehicles, you know. And I tried to do it properly because I decided that I will not do it only by listening to the people who are selling you parts. So I bought a large amount of books on Amazon, 6 or 7 engineering books, and I studied these, you know, how to build things to make it last, and how thermodynamics works, and how to calculate. So we did it right, and so we did have a lot of fun with that. So that's also, you know, a little bit loss of the interest in the boating was also fueling a little bit of the interest with the cars.
At least now you're back working with car engines and motors.
Yeah. And I was still doing my full-time job at the boat shop. So this was more of a hobby. But it was fun. I don't know how many I did, but I did a lot. And that's the reason I'm bringing this up, is it's a little bit key to what happened later, because since I was doing this tuning and so on, I decided that, and like I said, I was getting the books and I was understanding how things work. So the importer of JCB tractors, that was very popular also back in the mid-2000s. There were huge hauling tractors that you could drive on the road, and they were allowed to go 80 kilometers per hour. And they came with Cummins engines. So I made a deal with the importer there to supply them with tuning parts for these tractors.
These are like farm tractors, or are they?
No, not really. I don't know if you've seen them, but they have equal size wheels, front, back, yellow, with a central cabin. And they are used also a lot in construction sites, because you could also pull huge trailers with them. But they also could be used in farming. But it was a very popular thing. And then I was going a few times to Oslo, Knapstad, to work on the tuning, and we even had a dyno there to run them. And we built fuel injectors for them. We had the nozzles built, so we got the fueling up and the boost pressures up and so on. So we made quite good power on these.
So you were beefing up these kind of stock trailers.
Exactly. Exactly. But now, going back to my career now, you know, this is part of what was forming it, you know, that interest from a young age, interest in being a doctor, and that was triggered quite young, but it was sort of forgotten. And then in 2006, I was me and my girlfriend, we were on a holiday, and I met a guy on the plane. I got talking to him, and he told me he was studying medicine in, I believe it was in Poland. And that really caught my attention. You know, I was starting to get that thought back, you know, that maybe that would be a right career for me, you know, to work.
Because that thought had kind of faded.
Yeah, it
since
had
you were
faded
younger.
Since I was younger, and that was several reasons. You know, it was sports, it was hobbies, it was the shop we had. You know, these things sort of had disappeared, but then in 2006 there, it got really triggered again, I would be interested in doing that. And then I was talking about it with my girlfriend, and she didn't look very positively into moving out of the country and do this, It wasn't so much support from that side. So kind of I just put it away even a little bit more, I was like, I was 25, 26 at the time, and I was, maybe not. And but then something really, really changed. I got my first son when I was 28, so that was in 2007, and I was still doing the cars, I was still doing the tractors, I was still doing the boats, and I was still riding the dirt bikes. And I remember that summer, the summer after, it was in 2008. At the track we had up here, it was a Saturday and it was very dry. I was not in the best shape. Worked a lot, I was tired, and then I made a huge mistake on a big jump, and I hit it face on, and I crushed my right ankle and also my left arm. It was, and I knew immediately it was
bad.
Yeah. So, but for some reason, I wasn't too worried about it because I've been through it so many times, injury-wise. So I'm like, I felt I had so many things going on. So I was lying up there and I was thinking like, oh, maybe it will be good to have some time off.
You're not giving it to yourself. No. So these injuries are giving you your forced time off.
Yeah, so now I'm going to get some time on the couch.
But you had a 1-year-old, right?
Yeah, he was 9 years old.
Oh, he was 9?
No, 9 months. 9 months.
9 months. Oh,
yeah,
shit.
9 months.
Okay.
Or let's see. Yeah, it was the end of May, and he's born in June the year before. So he was 11 months. But that time it was much worse than any of the others. I've had a total of 17 fractures, but
on that single accident.
No, in total.
Oh, in total, yeah.
But from a physical point of view, this one was the one that was bad. I didn't know at the time, but it was bad. So I remember being in the hospital bed, and it was so swollen they couldn't operate on me, so we had to wait. And I remember lying there, and I just said to myself, now it's time. I'm gonna do it, and I'm not gonna stop. So I got out of the hospital, and I got into the rehab, and I was working out every day, more or less, to get back walking. And since I was studying economics, I was lacking the biology and the chemistry and the physics that you need to do medicine. So I decided to do that private, and I was already so banged up I couldn't go to work. I was on crutches for a long time. So I decided I will start with school. And first time, in my life, I actually, the school part was that these subjects were so easy for me. It was so much fun with chemistry, with biology, all of this. That
it just kind of came natural to you.
It was so different.
Right.
And also the motivation is completely different because you had been working for a while and you have different relationship to responsibility and doing your job. So suddenly this was not hard at all, and I managed to get through that with top grades and everything. And so there's a little bit of the trick that was interesting, because my family, they knew that I was doing these subjects, but nobody really knew that I was applying for the university. So I I did all of the exams, and then I applied for the entrance exams for studying medical school. And these exams were done in Oslo. So I told everyone I was going to tune some tractors. And
but did you purposely keep it a secret from your family? I mean, did you not think that they would give you this full support, or
what I was thinking was, since I was not in my mind taking over the business, I would not come and say that without having something real to show for.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So I didn't know if I would be accepted, if I would be any good at this. I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
But so I went to Oslo, and I had applied for these exams, and I was doing it under the cover that we are going to tune tractors. Yeah. So I did apply for 5 universities, and I did all 5 entrance exams. And,
oh wow!
and separated on 2 weekends, and it was a lot of fun. It felt so natural to me when I was doing this. So I was very proud, because on that day when I went and did the exam for the Prague University, so I had the highest score.
Wow.
So and then I was accepted immediately.
Wow.
So that was big. So when I came home, and I told my dad, I'm gonna go. So then I had support for doing that.
Wow.
But I was quite old. I was 28, 29 years old at the time. So it was an old age, and already had a kid. I had my son, I had a wife. So logistically, it's quite challenging compared to when you are just out of high school.
But I think it's quite courageous of you, because I mean, 28 isn't old by any measure, but I can see what you're saying. You're not 21.
Exactly.
But to make a career change like that, and to do something because it is so different from what you've done before.
It's completely
you've always been under a hood or under,
Yeah.
and now you're going to be, potentially dealing with the human body and medicine. But I find that, and I'm not just saying it because you're here, but I think that's very encouraging, and that's very courageous, because, someone, and I'm speaking for myself, because I'm 40 now, and I've had several careers. And people who might be listening to this might think, "Oh, I'm too old. I can't make a change. I can't go do what I love. I can't go take that risk." And the answer is, you can.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I read a book not too long ago by Jim Rohn called "Leading an Inspired Life." And in the book, what stands out is he says, in these scenarios where you're unhappy, or maybe maybe unsure about what you're doing now, and kind of looking, you almost can't not do that.
No,
because what you're doing, again, I'm not saying that everyone listening is in a shitty job or something, but a lot of people are in positions where, they're working for a company or for a boss or something, or they own their own business and they just hate it.
Yeah.
They just wake up every morning and they don't want to do what they want to do. So I would encourage you, I think you're a good example, to listen to the stories like yours and say, you know what, you can, 28, sure, going to medical school and stuff like that. You're not 18, but it's possible. And I think you're a good evidence of that.
Thanks for that. And definitely, I think if I was 20 or 19 or something, I don't think I would be able to do it. Because it's so different than what you imagine. It's nothing like you see on TV or what you can comprehend until you actually start it.
Yeah.
At that time, I packed up all of the stuff, and my wife at the time, she didn't want to go, and I had a 1-year-old, so I went there by myself first year, and I was trying to find place to stay and find my way, in the university, and on the weekends I would travel home as much as I could. And so we got through that. The first year it was very tough. They deliberately made the first year in Prague especially tough because they wanted to filter out who could
the weed
do
out
it.
process. Yeah.
So we had, but it was in the beginning it was a very, very different world. But like you say, with people, it's the level of, let's say, people that you meet in such an environment is so different than what I was used to from work and from the boat shop and all of that. So suddenly, from being, you had to really work hard to stay in front and to be in the best third. It was my goal, like personal goal, was always to be in the best third part of the class. Because I really think that once I was there, I was treating it more like a job and not like a hobby or going to school. It was what I was supposed to do. So it was a lot of fun. Studying medicine is really interesting, but it's incredibly different than people think. If you haven't gone through it, it's very the subjects are completely different. What you have to learn is completely different, and it's also very, very busy. You are always have to study.
Yeah.
All the time. But in my second year, my wife came, and my son came with her, and so they lived with me in Prague. And we were doing good, and I still enjoyed some of the fun things that was part of my life. So when I was there, I of course had the idea that I needed to have my cars and still have some fun. So I ended up with getting I actually bought a Lexus ISF there. I don't know if you know that one, but it's Lexus's version of an M3 in a way.
Yeah, the ISF. Yeah.
So it was a really cool car. And then in classic, my own fashion, I of course couldn't stop there, so I traded that a year later for a GTR.
You had a Nissan GTR.
Yeah.
In Prague.
In med school. So that was my car. So and I still have it. So
you still have the GTR?
Yeah, I have the R35 still.
Oh, no kidding! Wow.
So it's because of the taxes. So when I finished med school, we just moved the car to Spain. So now it's parked in the garage in my family's house in Spain.
When you go to Spain, you can enjoy it.
And then I have it. That's quite a lot of fun.
Well, they call it the European supercar killer, right? Godzilla.
It is. Yeah. We did a little bit tuning on that, not too much.
Yeah.
I wanted to.
But that GTR out the box is like, probably the most finely tuned like factory car you could buy, right?
At that time, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it came off the factory floor like basically tuned. Yeah. I mean, obviously people go crazy with it now, but
no, at the time it was 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Like I said, I had a lot of different cars. We had the Corvette, the C5, we had the C6. I even bought, I had an '08 Viper. And then we had these trucks, F-250s. But the difference when you come from these cars to the GTR is different, because it was so stable, it was so easy to drive. And part of the reason I got the interest again with the cars was one of my professors, my physiology professor. He was doing Miata racing.
Oh yeah,
the Miatas. So
that's huge.
Yeah, it is. And down there, they had a quite big group of guys, that were racing these Miatas.
Yeah.
And they so we were getting into talks in the cars and so on, and so he invited me, to come along and go to the track with them.
Yeah, yeah.
They had this open class, so I would go. I went there first with the ISF and then with the GTR, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
So
A buddy of mine who lives in Colorado has 2 Miatas. He's in the Miata Racing Club.
Yeah.
Huge base. Like, I mean, people love these. I mean, they're so cheap.
Yeah, it's
but you can do a lot and they're fun. They're not like 700 horsepower, but for the chassis and the setup and the platform, I mean, there's so much you can do to have fun.
And they are light and cheap, like you say, because car racing is extremely expensive. So this level, is very it's very nice and it's easy to work on yourself.
Because if you blow the motor, you can get one for 25,000.
Get one from the scrapyard.
Yeah.
In a way, they're getting old now. But back in those days, it was fun, because there were some new Miatas, and of course one of them went to the wall there, and so the guys would just grab it and tow it and throw it along the road, and then they ran into a deer or something, and they would put it on the insurance. So that's how it worked down there. But some of them were dedicated race cars, but I think all of them had plates.
Yeah. How was your GTR on the track?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was a bit too much power for that track that we were going to, but
it had, again, the GTR is known for giving a lot of like modification options, on board. So like I'm sure there could have been something, like some adjustments you can do with the.
Definitely, we did. I was trying the different setups, with traction, without traction, what modes you could access, and I found that on that track there is a R mode, but with a little bit assistance, which for me was the safest on the track there, because I would get a little bit support. To drive it completely off on that small track was a little bit sketchy. But the onboard computers are not engaging in that car to the extent that it's doing now. It allows you to spin all 4 wheels and just makes,
you can have fun with it.
Yeah, exactly. You can really have a lot of fun with it.
Because if you put it in full auto mode, I mean, sure, you can go fast, you'll probably get good times, but it's not really fun, right? I mean, you want to do some of the driving.
Exactly, and that's what it allows you to do. Yeah. With new cars now, you can hardly ever, you can almost not slide them on the snow.
No,
but
because the computer recognizes it,
knows immediately, and it will shut it down. So, but on the GTR, this is it was still possible to do.
That's funny you mentioned the Miata, because again, my friend's a big Miata guy, and then you mentioned the GTR, because I've actually been looking at a GTR.
Oh,
yeah. Because I mean, for the same reasons, right? I mean, you look at the price versus what you get versus what you can do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty much. I mean, for 15 years now, it's pretty much it's like.
It's still badass.
Yeah.
Still, still get the chills when you floor it.
Yeah.
I did some minor modifications on it. I still have the stock turbos, where we did the intakes and the cob tune, and we did some titanium exhaust and a little bit. So we has a great sound. But still, now with the electrics, it takes a few days to get used to. So now I'm driving electric car, and everything is so easy. But going back when I'm there in Spain,
that's awesome.
It's a lot of fun
with the sun and the roads. I got to see a picture of it afterwards.
Sure.
Yeah. I had when I was in Hawaii, I had a bunch of cars that I bought and sold, some motorcycles. I had an R6, an R1, like a rat bike, and then I had a couple other like cruisers. But the most recent car I had before I moved was a C7 Corvette.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was a lot of fun. It's very, very tail heavy.
Yep.
So if there's any rain at all, the thing would just go crazy.
It lights up.
But I had a pretty good exhaust on it, and it was fun. A lot of fun. Yeah.
LT1.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, I almost bought one on an auction that was damaged, a yellow one, but I decided that not going to take on any more work. But my dad had the CO6, the C6.
Oh yeah.
With 7 liter.
Yeah.
That was an awesome car as well.
Yeah.
So and that I had the '08 the Gen 4 Viper. But comparable, with the Corvette and the Viper there's no comparison. The Viper
How does it? I know you say it doesn't compare, but how would you, how does it?
It's the Corvettes are possible to drive. The Viper is so brutal. It's a lot of fun because the engaging part of driving is there, but it's very dangerous.
There's not much balance in that.
No,
it's like a crazy guy on drugs.
It's too much power and too little control.
Yeah.
It's very hard to drive it.
The Viper is like a guy on heroin. The Corvette's like a guy on some coke.
Oh, so, something like that. It's just smooth. It's controlled. It's balanced.
Yeah.
But I didn't get to drive the C8 yet.
Yeah.
But that's supposed to be good.
Yeah, I sold it. So I didn't have. I bought it, and then I was gonna modify it and stuff like this, and then we were thinking about moving. So I was like, I'm just gonna put it on the market, at a ridiculous price. Literally 1 month after I bought it, and then some guy called me and said, "That's the one that I want." He said it's the right color, it's the right everything, options. He's like, "I want it." He's like, "Whatever price." So I sold it for I think over 100,000 kroners more in 4 weeks.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it was just basically a flip.
That's
but I didn't. But it became really popular when the C8 came out because it was the last of the front engine Corvettes.
Yeah.
So it kind of became like a I don't know, like a nostalgic thing,
Exactly.
And then before it went mid-engine, but yeah, a ton of fun. I haven't driven the C8 yet though.
No, I have a friend who has a couple, maybe 2 or 3. I'm not sure how many he has, but he has the first version and the second version, and also has on order the new turbo version.
They have they just came out, not just, but I think recently the C8 Z06 version.
Yeah. And
Insane.
he has the CR1 on order as well, so that will probably this year. It has 1,064 horsepower.
Yeah,
so it's gonna be bad.
It's insane.
Bad.
Yeah, I was meaning because these Corvettes are a lot cheaper in the U.S. just because there's a lot more. I was actually looking into buying a C8 in the U.S. and then having it shipped, but the taxes here are so crazy. That's shit.
What I was getting at.
Yeah,
it's not affordable.
No,
you can't pay that. You could buy 3 for the same. For the price.
Yeah, crazy.
One. So that's why the electrics are so popular. That's why the big trucks were so popular before, because they were tax-free. So now here, I would say if you're not going hybrid or not going electric, it's too expensive.
Yeah, it is.
I'm not willing to pay that much tax.
No.
That's just.
They make it hard for car enthusiasts, petrol heads here.
Yeah. But that's politics. But the car tax has been this high as long as I remember. I don't know why, but it's probably viewed as a luxury product, and it's driving has been part of state income. So it's been part of that forever. So even they also had the tax on the horsepower tax on the outboard engines back in the days.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was bigger than the margins that we had to work on. So the state was making more money from the engines than we did. But this has actually been removed. So now it's not there anymore.
If there's one thing Norway's good at, it's taxing.
Oh yeah. On everything is taxed. So.
It's easy. It's so much easier in the U.S. just to buy a car and have a garage and have just things are. I mean, you can buy a car so easily here. Yeah. The taxes are so cheap. You don't have to pay anything for registration. No. It just makes it so much easier.
It's just a huge difference. It's a huge difference. But then again, from one point of view, I'm very happy with the taxing system that they put on the electric cars, because it gave an opportunity to actually get a environmentally friendly vehicle that is fast and very comfortable and at a price that was possible to pay. So from that part is something I think they did right. But of course, it's not an even playing field at all. If you would allow everyone to have the car they wanted, so of course that would be the best way to go. If you would just have normal VAT, but the tax on a Corvette, if the car is $100,000, you would probably have 150 of tax on top.
You pay more in taxes than actually. Yeah. No, when I was looking it up and I found that out, I was like, this has to be a mistake. But then my father-in-law said, no, this is the tax.
This is true. Yeah, it is true.
Yeah.
And that was back in '97 when I bought that C5. In the US, I think I paid $41,000 for the car, which at the time would be about 280 Norwegian. That was brand new. And the tax when we imported it, 6 months old or 1 year old, we put Norwegian tax on after a year was 480,000 NOK.
So the price of the car was 280 and the tax was 400.
480. So that's a pretty big tax. So you could actually get three Corvettes for that price.
Yeah. So that's basically Norway saying, okay, don't do that.
Yeah. You could.
Unless you're willing to pay the price.
But it's not in any way fair for anyone because it's not only hitting enthusiasts. It's for everybody. Everybody the same. Yeah.
But it is nice because Norway is leading the charge globally, with the push of electric vehicles. I think there's more EVs here than, per capita than anywhere else in the world. Yeah. And they have the infrastructure, like you can get around and go all the way up north and there's charging stations everywhere. And
I think it's very interesting. It's interesting. And I've had 2 electrics now. Yeah. And I've been very happy with them, incredibly easy to drive. Great power. It's instant power. You don't have the sound. You don't have that V8 sound. You don't have that thrill of. But it's just different. You just have to appreciate that as something different.
But I gotta say, you and I as car guys, okay, because I have an EV too. I have a Tesla. Yeah. For all the reasons you just said, I love this car. It's got the torque. It's got the power. We have to be careful because we're getting away from the petrol side, Like I love motors, and then after getting my EV, I know I need that back in my life,
that is true. And I started in my head. I've been out of that car, world for quite a bit due to my other career. Yeah. But what I do have an old Dodge Ram SRT10, the truck with the Vipering engine. So I bought it new in 2004. So I still have that one in my garage with only 30,000 kilometers on it.
Oh, you're the original owner, and
So it was an 8.3, and we built that at the time with twin turbos. So we were putting down 833 to the tires on that one.
But for a heavy car.
It was ridiculous. But I still have that one. So I'm working on rebuilding and getting that back on the road, and I'm also starting to look a little bit on boats again, maybe getting a little bit into boats.
Okay, yeah.
So we'll see. Got something brewing there. But just do it one step at a time. Because now I have 3 kids. I have my company, and there's been so much going on. The last how many years is that? 17 years. So a lot of these. I got to do some of these hobby and fun things on the side.
But I think it's okay to bring it back, like a weekend toy, It's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly, and I'm looking forward to that.
I'm sure you and I can turn this off and talk about motors and cars for 2 hours.
For hours.
But the last thing about cars, though, like So I've been looking for like kind of a weekend car, and I've been looking at the GTR, maybe some late '90s, early 2000s, mid 911. Yeah. Those are timeless.
Yeah,
you know. So yeah, I mean, I think for guys like us, we need a weekend car. You know, we need something with a motor. You know,
that's been growing inside of me. You know, the last couple of years, and I really think that truck, when I get my SRT10 back, you know, I've got some nice plans for it, because the original car, you know, it came with a 6-speed Viper transmission, and that's pretty difficult in such a huge vehicle. You have to keep your hands on the steering wheel. So we are rebuilding it. The engine is out at this time, so we are rebuilding it, and we are putting in a modern 8-speed automatic. So that will be very interesting.
What engine?
It will be, well, we are building a Generation 5 Viper engine for this one, so it's out of a 17 model. So we are putting that one in, working on some turbos there and transmission and so on. So we are looking at.
You said it was a petrol or diesel?
It's a Viper. It's a gasoline engine.
A gasoline engine. Okay.
So it's a
Would
8.4 liter V10.
Would an LS do okay on that format, or?
Well, the LS or LT, newer generations, well, we can't put that in a Dodge, can we?
Yeah,
we're wrong.
You'd get shot.
No, we wouldn't. No, it has. You know, the truck was a designated. You know, it was the world's fastest pickup truck in 2004, and they only produced it from 2004 to 2006.
Oh, it's just 2 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
it's kind of like a collectibles item.
It is. Now it is. You know, I didn't realize when I bought it, but I just wanted the fastest pickup truck in the world. So
I think that kind of like sparked the whole like fast truck thing, you know, because I remember the Ford Lightning came out, everyone loved that, and then now the Raptors and there's all kinds of really beautiful trucks.
The Lightning was the first one, or actually the GMC Cyclone, I would say, was the first one.
Really, I've never.
Really, 91 was a
Cyclone,
turbocharged V6. It was fast. And then Ford came up with the Lightning.
Yeah, that did very well.
Yeah, and those were very popular here. And the tuning days, we did some of those.
Yeah.
And then Dodge came out with this one where they basically took the Gen 3 Viper engine and put it in the 1500 truck.
Yeah.
And they did a lot of modification as well, you know, to the suspension and
you have to,
transmission, and it did do. How fast? Well, it did. I think it from stock did 260 kilometers per hour.
Wow!
So it beat the Lightning. Wow. That was cool. It was 500 horsepower.
Wow!
Back in 2004. So, of course, in my style, I drove it a little bit and then I tore it down and I put the turbos on it, and it was incredibly fast.
Any turbo lag or not much?
No, we managed to work very well on that.
On the lower end,
you know, this is interesting question, you know, because one is always talking about turbo lag. And in my opinion, there is no such thing as turbo lag, really. Because if you think naturally aspirated, everybody is talking about the lag, you know, but what you're actually talking about is boost threshold. And if you have an engine without the turbo, it will lag all the time. So if you have a completely stock engine and you put on a turbo there, so it's a air density creator. So it sort of increases the volume of your engine, basically, because it pushes more air to it. So the low-end power, if everything would remain the same, would still be the same as a naturally aspirated one. But once you get on boost, so that is when you start making more power than the naturally aspirated engine. So turbo lag, it's what people call it. You know?
I get what you're saying. Yeah, because without it, there wouldn't, you know, I see what you're saying.
There's no boost. So, but it's more of a perceived thing.
Yeah.
But there are many ways to work on that. Because, it's like there is no replacement for displacement in a way.
Yeah.
But if you have big displacement with boost, that's even better.
You're making something bigger and better even.
So getting a lot bigger.
Yeah.
But when we did that V10, so I dynoed it as stock. And then I rebuilt the engine. We did a little bit post work, and we put in forged pistons and rods, bolts, just basic stuff. And we dynoed it after. So we went from, at the time we made stock, it made 419 to the tires. So we did lower the compression a little bit, but we did that with cam work. We did little bit head work, and we ended up at 430. Actually, we improved it a little bit over stock. So we were at 430, and you can imagine we got the boost on, so we made 833. We had 1,200 pound-feet of torque at 4,000.
4,000 RPM. Wow, that's low.
So, but turbo sizing and so on. We had positive pressure from 1,500 RPM. So it was good.
Holy shit!
But
so good for going fast. Good for towing as well.
Yeah.
Good for everything.
But really bad for gas economy.
Yeah, I can't imagine. You're not driving that for fuel efficiency. Yeah. Well, I'd like to talk about the business that you have now. Obviously, you finished medical school and you came back. And is Mosaic a couple? Like, can you kind of walk us through kind of how that came about?
Yeah, Mosaic is our company. I own it with a colleague. She's a nurse. Reidun, Følgesvold is her name. So how this came about, we were when I was done in med school and I was back in Norway, I decided that it would be a good thing to not have to work so much, because I had spent too much time away from my son, I would say, and kids. So I did mostly work. I started working in occupational medicine and general practice. What I wanted to be originally was, because the subject that I enjoyed the most was actually gynecology. And I still think I would have made a good hospital doctor there. What I liked about that subject is not that you are always working with women, but you get to do, in the hospital, it's very sectioned. So if you are an orthopedist, you get to become a specialist of knee or hip, and then you are doing that almost the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And if you're a plastic surgeon, so you will specialize within hand, for example, and you will do mostly that. So what I really liked about gynecology and obstetrics was that you got to do, let's say, all sides of medicine, but the patient was always a woman. So you got to do surgery. You had the emergency room. You had polyclinical things. We had small surgeries. We had big surgeries. We had cancer surgeries. So you were involved in all of the aspects of medicine in the same discipline, and that's very difficult to achieve in the other disciplines, because if you're in oncology, you're only doing cancer.
You're so specialized.
Yeah. So that's what I really liked with gynecology, and also with obstetrics. you are part of the start of life, and birth, which is fun. You know, that's a good moment.
Yeah,
you know.
It's a happy,
happy time. You know, and not just being sick. Because I just wasn't able to stand so much. I couldn't do operation or surgery. I was trying it. I was definitely trying it.
Because you're standing for hours.
Exactly. You know, when I was doing orthopedics, I'm still a good mechanic, you know, so it was also fun. But my feet couldn't take it. You know, it wasn't possible. So I and with the kids, so I decided that we will go more on the GP way. So, and also to have more workable hours and not have to do too much night shifts and so on. So from in the start of my career, I was doing some occupational medicine and petroleum at the stations. You know, I had a job as a FAL, we call it, as a fagansvarlig lege, which is you are responsible for oil installations, basically, and also have the contact with the nurses and the paramedics that are working on the rigs. So I was doing that. So then, as a part, you know, I also did it's not a very big thing, but we did the education on the Siemens certification. So that's kind of getting me back to the boats in a way, circling. So I do that, and then I also did the diving medicine. And so I was working in as a GP in occupational medicine from really the start. And in 2016, I went to work in Forårsakuten, it was called. I had a good time there. But I felt in the way that from the work we put in, we generally were not paid well enough, you know. So I changed, and I also had a position in the public health system for a while as a GP, fastlege, and did the emergency room legevakt. But in 2019, so we got together, me and Reidun and a couple of other colleagues, and we were thinking, you know, it would be a great idea to start something of our own, you know, because then we would be able to give the kind of service that we would like to. Because always, it's like you said, you know, when you're working for somebody, you are being dictated a lot of rules. And these rules are often quite okay, you know, it's not necessarily difficult, and it's also easier to be employed in a way, in many ways. But I just felt like we could do a little bit better. So we put our heads together, and initially we were supposed to be 4 starting this up. And we did start it. So Mosaic is what we call the company. We are so certified as a general practitioner office, and also we have a occupational medicine service, which you have to have, because in Norway you have pretty strict rules about exposures and what people can do and cannot do, and loads and so on. So we have a lot of customers that buy these services from us, either from the hygiene point of view to see that they don't have too much toxins, or the exposures, that they have the proper vaccines to work what they do. And also the work environment, like lighting, sound proofing, and proper equipment with what you're working with. So that's a big part of it, what we do. And then also we have, I believe we are all more or less the only clinic that currently have what we thought of together was to provide more of a complete service to the companies that want to use us. And that is, so we have every day I have reserved emergency service for workers who are get injured, for example, if they have some injury at work. Because the companies, they are very interested in having, everything registered properly and that people are treated quickly and so on. And if they cut themselves, of course, if it's a big injury, it's 113 and they will go to the hospital. But anything that's not 113, that they would come to us and we will prioritize them and get that taken care of. So stitching, contusions, whatever, basically. And we log it and we report it to the proper authorities that need to log these things. So that's big part of what we do. And also we have we're also doing private general practice for people. We do have a lot of foreigners that come because they don't have a GP, for example, that are part of the public system. And we have also some very good insurance deals. So I'm also available for example, NATO. So I do have a lot of American customers or patients that are from that from the military. So we are basically offering general practice with occupational medicine, and also we have a cardiologist and internalist that is there on a what's needed basis. So that's what we are doing at the time. So we have in-house physio and rehab. We also do laser treatment, both cosmetic and medical. And we do some small surgeries that don't need complete anesthesia and so on. So I think I like it, what we are doing now, because we get to do it the way we would like to do it. And also, I think that it's important to offer the customer a good package, so that they would like to have, because there are some difficulties in the health system, and also a lot of people are interested in second opinions on several things. Yeah. So I really think the structure is good. It's been hard work. It's always hard work. When you start up a company, it takes some time. And we set ourselves not too lofty goals at the time. Now we are only two owners in the company. It's me and Reidun. And the goals for 24 we managed to achieve. So now we have environmental, it's called Miljøfyrtårn. It's an environmental approval rating that is how you interact with who you buy from, and also how they are treating the environment and how we are treating the environment from our, operation. And also that was one of the goals for 24, and also we put a lot of work, especially Reidun, she put a lot of work into ISO certification. So we managed to get the ISO 9001 certification done this year, and we're quite proud of that because we did it all in-house with our own people. We did it. So that has to do with quality and processes of what you are able to provide the customer.
Yeah.
And this was an important step for us because it opens up, let's say, new possibilities for giving our services to larger companies also that have specific, let's say, demands from their suppliers. So this is it's been a very, very interesting, challenging road, but we achieved all of that what we wanted in 1994. So right now we are in the process of creating the new goals for 25. So I hope we will manage to achieve those as well.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I mean, especially for it being not so old. I think you guys have done a fantastic job. Just so everyone knows, I'm a patient of Gunnar, and I've had, just from my personal experience, I've had such a good experience in working together. You're always willing to listen and offer different options. I think your approach is a little bit more reserved, which I really like. So that whole second opinion or anything, if anyone's listening and they're just kind of unsure about their GP or want a second opinion, I went through a whole thing with my father about 12 years ago. He had gastric and esophageal cancer. And the first oncologist that we went to said, this will be your last Christmas with your father. And that's kind of what we kind of accepted because he's a doctor, but through some counseling and stuff like that, they had recommended that we get a second opinion. And so we did. We went to Johns Hopkins, which is arguably one of the best oncology departments. And the doctor there was a godsend for us. And he said, you know what? This doesn't look good, but we can do some chemotherapy. And then if he responds well, we can do surgery and then do some more chemotherapy to see how it works out. And it gave us like a glimmer of hope. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, had we just gone to that first doctor, my father probably wouldn't be here today. But that second doctor gave us a glimmer of hope. It was a second opinion, which we decided to go with. And he's still alive and well today. So that's incredible. Yeah. So if anyone's listening, again, don't take my word for it. If you have a general practitioner out there that you're going to that, maybe you don't feel comfortable with, or maybe you just want a second opinion, I think a facility like Mosaic is a great place to go just to see, hey, what does another physician think about what's going on with me or my son or my father or my mother? So I think I thank you for what you're doing, and I thank you for being my doctor.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you've been a tremendous part of my life and here in Norway, because obviously being new, like I have doctors in the U.S. but not here. I just feel very lucky to have met you, and I thank you for what you're doing for me and for everyone else that you treat at your facility.
That's nice to hear. Thank you very much. I appreciate to hear that.
Yeah, of course.
I always had that thought in my mind that we should do our best every time, and I think that's in Norwegian we call it framoverlent, which means that you're leaning forward, that you're approaching people with the intention to be there and to help as good as you can and to offer a good service. And I think that's just a good rule for any work, basically. So that's nice. Yeah. The name, Mosaic is quite interesting as well, because the decision on the name is basically, what is mosaic? Yeah, it's a collection. In art, it's put together by many small pieces, and that's exactly what disease is and the human body is. It's many different parts and many different systems that are working in harmony. And also disease is sort of it's a biochemical imbalance in some sort. So that's why we put the name Mosaic, because the name is covering what actually is with the human body. It's some mosaic of problems or cooperation between organ systems and tissues. So.
Yeah, I really like the name, but now that I know how and why it was created, I mean, that's even more significant. That's really cool. That makes a lot of sense.
That was that was the thought behind it. So not everybody knows this, because but I that's why we landed on the name. And you can see it also written with a C, because in Norwegian it would be with K. So we put an English, it's actually an English or American name on it. And so no, it was it's been a challenge. It's been fun, and we're working on it still. So we are hoping to develop it even more.
Yeah. Well, I think you guys are doing a fantastic job, and if I'm already a patient, so I'm lucky, I'm already in. If you're listening and you are interested in getting in touch with either Gunnar or the clinic or his staff, where can they find you?
Oh, they will find us online on mosaicmedical.no. It's in one sentence. So you will find us there, or you can also send us an email at contact@mosaicmedical.no, and we will respond. Then you will get to the reception, and we will set you up with an appointment. Whether it's a company that's looking for healthcare, or if it's private person, or it doesn't matter. We'll try and take care of you the best way we can.
Fantastic. Well, shit, we've been here for I think over 2 hours. I mean, we could easily talk about another, cars for another 2 hours, or any of your interesting topics here. But I just want to say thank you for your time today, and thank you so much for sharing your life story. And I think it's incredibly important what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, if we don't have health, we have nothing. So thank you again for coming, and thanks everyone for.
It's really nice to be invited. Thank you very much, and maybe sometime we'll do something again.
Absolutely. You're welcome back anytime. And we can, I'm sure we can have a whole podcast session just about cars or about motors.
Each of one of these topics.
Exactly. So
thanks so much, and we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see you.
All right, guys. Okay. Thank you.